All right, hey folks, so today's video is going to be addressing the misconception that if you have a limited amount of time in the gym, you should just go in and try and do as much as possible in the time that you have. That might not actually be the best use of your time. In fact, it might actually be killing your gains. Firstly, thanks for making it onto my channel. If you have any questions or comments, pop them down below. And if you would like to work with me on your own strength and physique goals, there is a link in the description. So this video was sparked on by a conversation I had with an elder gentleman at the gym the other day, and we were working in with exercise with a chest press machine, and he decided to ask me some questions about training and how long to rest between sets. So I kind of broke down the science for him, and I just said, you've got to rest a sufficient amount of time between sets to enable you to put forth the effort required to build muscle. And he had this misconception that because his goal was fat loss, he should just be doing high reps and short rest periods. You know, you guys know the whole like toning for fat loss kind of thing, right? And he said, well, that's my goal. Also, I don't have a great deal of time in the gym. So the time that I do have, I want to do as much as I can. And I said, okay, I get that. But if doing as much as you can means it's actually pointless, then there's no point doing it. And he understood that. So I wanted to make a video about that because I feel like this is probably a fairly relatable situation for a lot of people, that they're in the gym but their ultimate goal is fat loss rather than muscle gain. And so they look at these younger guys lifting these heavy weights and they go, that's for them. They're just trying to be bodybuilders. Leave that to them. But they don't actually realize that that's what they should be doing for burning fat. For long-term fat loss success, when you're in the weight room, you need to be lifting heavy weights. And I think there's still a large portion of the general population who still believe that if the goal is fat loss, they should just be lifting light weights and short periods and kind of tone themselves into amazing shape somehow. So I want to address that. And also, I want to show you a study where they directly tested some of this and to give you perhaps a view forward and what to do when you're actually in the gym to maximize your time. So let's start with this. So firstly, the lies and misconceptions. The first one is this. The first one is that all volume is created equally. That's just so not true. So one set that, like, for example, this guy who I was working in with, one set he was doing is not going to be worth the same as one set that Dorian Yates was doing in his prime, right? And I think that's obvious. We don't need to explain that one, right? The Dorian Yates set was done with such a high level of intensity for himself. Now, obviously, the weight was different, but the weight is relative. So obviously, Dorian was using a higher level of actual relative intensity, really, really focused in on the set, pushing everything into that set. Whereas this guy was doing probably 20% of the effort, you know? And he was just doing set after set after set with really poor intensity. So all those sets were not the same as any of Dorian's sets whatsoever. So that's just something which I feel like it's obvious when you say it out loud, but it's something which I feel I need to say because it can get lost in the mix. Others will perhaps compromise on doing more volume and doing a little bit less effort and continuously push that model of more volume, less effort, more volume, less effort. Before they know it, they're just doing a lot of ineffective volume, which then leads to, you know, the junk volume kind of thing. But I actually think the junk volume thing comes about a lot sooner than most people realize. And I think most people just don't train that hard anyway. And so they delve into junk volume status, junk volume territory a lot quicker than they think. So next thing is, just take no rest periods and go, like rest, 20 seconds and go. And somehow that working like that is going to be actually harder. It's not. In general, that's going to be easier because your muscles aren't going to fail that much. It's going to be just the fact that your muscles aren't recovered yet enough to really push hard. And so you'll notice when you do training like that, you don't actually get weaker towards the end of the session. I see this sometimes I've done training like this. And you end up with the same level of relative strength at the beginning of a workout as you do at the end. You're never really taxing your muscles to the point where they can't go anymore. Whereas if you do a really heavy duty, high intensity workout, you will notice a strength drop off. And that's one of the metrics I use with my clients to determine if they're working hard enough. If you get a strength drop off, odds are you are working hard enough. If you say you're working hard enough, but your strength doesn't drop off towards the end of the workout, then got a surprise for you, dude. You probably aren't, because you've not actually damaged any muscle tissue to enable it for it to get weaker, to enable it to grow stronger next time. So that's something to bear in mind. The last two are more sets and more reps to burn more fat. It's a very misguided way of thinking. Now, in the short term, more overall work will burn marginally more fat. However, the reason that you're in the gym is to build muscle tissue. It's not to burn fat. If you want to burn fat through exercise, there are more efficient ways of doing that, which is just jump on a treadmill, right, or elliptical train or whatever. So it's a misguided way of thinking, because you're not in the gym to burn fat. You're in the gym to build muscle tissue, which will burn fat in the long run. If you're just looking to mechanically burn more calories, get on the treadmill, do more steps, do some cardio activity, because that will give you more calorie burn with less overall stress on the body. So it's a win-win. But typically speaking, that's not why people are in the weight room. So use the weight room for what it's intended for, which is to build muscle. So those are some lies and misconceptions. And now let's talk a bit about the study. So this is going to run contrary to what a lot of you guys think and believe in, because my audience, you're all very clued up people. You check out the latest research. I'm sure you're well aware of the research which has been building up over the last 10 years or so by your Brad Schoenfelds, your Mike Israetels, all that kind of stuff, which points to higher and higher volumes being better and better and better. Like, I think the latest or the most controversial one certainly was the 45 sets study by Brad Schoenfeld, which found greater and greater levels of growth. However, there is still a very large area of the field of research of hypertrophy which is dominated with lower volume protocols. And you might think to yourself, well, how can science simultaneously say that high volume and low volume work at the same time? Well, it's simply because these guys train their participants really, really hard. I actually conducted an interview with James Steele, Dr. James Steele. He was one of the guys who conducted this study a couple of years ago now. It's on my podcast if you want to go and have a look. But he found in this study, he compared higher volume, lower intensity approach with a lower volume, high intensity approach. The lower volume, high intensity approach was very much like a HIIT, like a Dorian Yates style of training. Whereas the higher volume approach was just a typical kind of bodybuilder 3 sets of 10 type of approach. So you see here, this is kind of what it looked like. The HIIT protocol was 1 set with a couple of drop sets. So it was roughly around about 15 reps altogether. The 3 straight sets were 3 sets of 10, which is about 30 reps. So the HIIT group were doing about half the volume of the bodybuilder group altogether. And that was the same for all the muscle groups, across the 10-week period. And they found that the higher intensity, lower volume protocol produced more growth and greater fat loss over the course of 10 weeks than the traditional bodybuilding methodology. The key differences were this. The volume was far less, but the level of intensity was far higher. Well, I say far higher. They weren't specific on how far, but it was higher in the HIIT group. It was lower in the traditional bodybuilding group, but the traditional bodybuilding group weren't training easily either. It was fairly reflective of how bodybuilders train. It was trained to like a rep max, essentially. So they were training roughly in that ballpark. Maybe, I don't know, at a guess, I would say 2 to 4 reps away from failure. But we found that even with half the work, the higher intensity approach got better gains altogether over the course of 10 weeks. So, interesting takeaways from this. In terms of sort of, and I'll link the study down below in the description. You can read it yourself. My summary of this, particularly for you guys, like the example of this video, which is the guy who's kind of middle-aged, goal is fat loss, etc., doesn't have much time. The summary for this is, when you're in the gym, your training needs to be hard. It needs to be extremely hard. What I mean by hard is this: the limiting factor needs to be your muscular effort and not your cardiovascular system. When you're doing an exercise, you have to fail on that exercise because your muscles can no longer move, not because you are simply A, cardiovascularly tired, or B, you're just fatigued from the set before, which happened 30 seconds ago, right? You have to actually put some real muscular effort into this. Now, if you're not aware of how to do that, well, yeah, get in touch. I will help you with that. That's part of what my coaching is, to make you understand what these things are. But firstly, start with taking a couple of minutes rest period, seeing how much heavier you can lift if you actually are doing higher rest periods. Now, if you are sat there and you're getting bored between your rest periods, bear in mind you can do supersets. So you can superset alternate muscle groups, so like a chest with a back, biceps with triceps, legs with shoulders, whatever, right? You can superset things which aren't connected, aren't related, which are opposites. So that way you can get more work in less time. So I don't know, let's say you're on the chest press machine and you bring over a barbell so you can curl in between. They're both not really that connected. Okay, so that means you can train with less rest overall, but still get sufficient rest in between the body parts. But anyway, my point is this: if you're in the gym to burn muscle, to build muscle, you're not in the gym to burn fat. Your training needs to be limited by your muscular effort. Your muscles are what should be failing. They should not be failing because you are cardiovascularly tired, or you're just like fatigued from the set before and your nervous system is just messed up and it can't operate. You've got to train hard. And also, heavyweights are not the realms of big, dumb meathead bodybuilders. Can we just get that misconception out of the way for right now? Just completely do away with it. Building muscle is not this weird narcissistic endeavor that it's really kind of like kitsch and hip to call bodybuilders meatheads. Like, look, we've got it right. All right, for health, we've got it right. Building muscle and staying lean long term is amazing for health. It's not just a narcissistic endeavor. So if you're 53 years old and you think, well, the heavyweights for the young guys, no, you need to be on that train as well. You need to be on that bandwagon too. All right, folks, I'm going to call it there. As I say, if you would like to discuss this with me further and work with me and let me help you get set up with your own strength and physique goals, there is a link in the description. We can get in touch. I've got a coaching model, which is very nice and affordable, and it works. Feel free to check out my Instagram for all the results. I post lots of results regularly. And if you're interested, get in touch. All right, folks, I will speak to you next time. Hopefully you found that useful, and I'll speak to you next time.